Why 99% of Africans manage money the wrong way. And what Dangote does instead. Let me ask you something. How do you manage your money right now? If you are like most people on this continent, the answer follows a pattern so common, it has become invisible. You receive your salary or your business revenue. You pay your bills. You send money to family. You spend on food, transport, daily life, and if anything is left at the end of the month, which is rare, you put it in a savings account and call it financial discipline. That is not financial discipline. That is financial survival dressed up as a plan. And here is the brutal truth that nobody in your school, your church, or your family ever told you. The way 99% of Africans manage money is specifically designed to keep them exactly where they are. Not by conspiracy, not by accident, by a fundamental misunderstanding of what money actually is and what it is supposed to do. Dangote understood this difference before he had his first million. It is the reason he went from $3,000 to $20 billion. And today I am going to show you exactly what that difference is and how you can apply it starting this week. The saving trap. Here is the first thing Dangote would tell you about how most people manage money. Saving is not a wealth strategy. Saving is a survival strategy. There is a fundamental difference between the two, and confusing them is the single most expensive mistake you will ever make with your finances. When you put money in a savings account, what actually happens to it? In most African countries, savings accounts pay between 2 and 5% interest annually. Meanwhile, inflation runs at 10, 15, sometimes 20% per year. In Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, the numbers change, but the story is always the same. Your savings account is not growing your money. It is slowly destroying it. Every year, your money sits in that account, losing purchasing power silently, invisibly, without a single alarm, going off to tell you that what you thought was discipline is actually slow financial erosion. The top 1% do not save money the way you were taught to save. They deploy money. There is a difference between money sitting still and money working. Money sitting in a savings account is an employee who shows up every day and does nothing. Money deployed into an asset is an employee who works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without asking for a break or a salary increase. Dangote never accumulated money for the sake of accumulating it. Every dollar that came into his hands went back out immediately. Into inventory, into equipment, into people, into expansion. He treated capital like a tool, not like a trophy. The 3 accounts the top 1% use that nobody taught you. Here is how. Dangote and the people who think like him actually structure their money. Not 1 account, 3. The first account is the operating account. This is the money you need to live. Rent, food, transport, utilities, phone, the non-negotiables. Dangote's rule, and the rule of every serious wealth builder, is that this account should contain the minimum necessary to live with dignity. Not comfort, not luxury, dignity. Most people put everything into this account and call it their financial life. That is the mistake. This account should be the smallest of the 3. The second account is the investment account. This is where wealth actually gets built. Every month, before you pay a single bill, before you send money to family, before you buy anything, a fixed percentage of your income goes directly into this account. Automatically, non-negotiably, as if it does not exist for any other purpose. Dangote's personal rule for the first 25 years of his career was 80% reinvestment. Everything that was not absolutely necessary for survival went back into the business, back into assets, back into growth. For most people starting out, 80% is not realistic. But 20% is. 30% is. And here is the key. It must happen first, not after you have paid everyone else. First, you pay yourself first, always. The third account is the protection account. This is your emergency reserve. 6 months of living expenses, sitting completely untouched in a separate account that you do not look at. Do not touch and do not count as part of your wealth. Why 6 months? Because crises do not announce themselves. A health emergency, a family obligation you cannot refuse, a business downturn, a global pandemic. Without 6 months of protection, any one of these events can destroy everything you have built. Not because you made bad decisions, but simply because you had no buffer between you and disaster. Most Africans have 0 months of protection. That is why a single crisis sends them back to 0 every time. The top 1% are not smarter than you. They are simply better protected. If you are still watching, subscribe right now. Because what comes next is the part that will make everything else make sense. It is the piece that connects saving, investing, and protecting into one coherent system. The same system Dangote has used for 4 decades. The asset mindset. Here is the question that separates the top 1% from everyone else. When you receive money, what is the first question you ask? Most people ask, what do I need to pay? What do I owe? What is due this month? The top 1% ask a completely different question. What can this money become? That single shift in thinking and from money as something to spend to money as something to deploy is the entire difference between financial survival and financial freedom. Dangote never looked at a sum of money and thought about what it could buy him today. He looked at every sum of money and thought about what it could produce tomorrow. Next year, in 10 years, when he had $3,000, he did not think, what can I buy with $3,000? He thought, what problem can I solve with $3,000 that will generate $30,000? And then, what can I do with $30,000 that will generate $300,000? This is called compound thinking. And it is the mental operating system of every person who has ever built serious wealth. Anywhere in the world, let me make this concrete. Imagine you have $500 at the end of this month after all your expenses. The 99% decision, put it in savings. Feel responsible. Watch it slowly lose value. The top 1% decision, ask what asset can $500 buy me access to right now? A small inventory to trade, a digital skill that will generate income for years. A fractional investment in real estate, a tool that reduces your costs or increases your capacity. $500 deployed into an asset that generates 20% annually becomes $600 in year 1, $720 in year 2, $864 in year 3. In 10 years, it is over $3,000 without you adding a single additional dollar. $500 sitting in a savings account at 3% interest with 15% inflation is worth less than $400 in real purchasing power after 3 years. Same $500, completely different outcome. The only variable is the question you asked when the money arrived. The 3 things the top 1% never do with money. Dangote has said this in different ways across many interviews and conversations. There are 3 things that the people who build lasting wealth never do, and that 99% of people do constantly. They never spend money they do not have. This sounds obvious. It is not obvious at all in practice. Credit cards, mobile loans, buy now pay later schemes. The entire modern financial system is built to make spending money you do not have feel normal and even responsible. The top 1% treat debt as a tool for building assets, never for funding consumption. Dangote has never borrowed money to live. He has borrowed money to build. That distinction is everything. They never make financial decisions under social pressure. This is the African-specific trap that destroys more wealth on this continent than any other single factor. The ceremony you fund because people will talk. The car you buy because your colleagues have one. The house you build in the village before you have built your investment portfolio. Because your mother expects it. Every one of these decisions is a financial choice made by someone else's expectations instead of your own strategy. The top 1% make financial decisions in silence, alone, based on one question only. Does this move me closer to my goal or further away? They never mistake lifestyle for wealth. This is perhaps the most dangerous confusion in Africa right now. A big car is not wealth. A large house is not wealth. An expensive wardrobe is not wealth. These are consumption. Wealth is assets that generate income while you sleep. Wealth is the factory that runs without you. Wealth is the investment portfolio that grows whether you wake up or not. Dangote is one of the wealthiest men in the world, and he has been known to move in ordinary vehicles and eat in simple places, not because he cannot afford otherwise, because he understands that visible wealth and real wealth are not the same thing, and confusing them is the trap that keeps 99% of people performing success instead of building it. What you do this week? I am not going to leave you with theory. Here is what you do, starting today. Open 3 separate accounts if you do not already have them. Label them clearly in your mind. operating, investment, protection. Decide your percentages before your next payment arrives. Even if it is 70% operating, 20% investment, 10% protection. The exact numbers matter less than the system existing at all. Find one asset you can access with whatever you have right now. Not next year when you have more, now with what you have. A small trade, a digital skill, a fractional investment. Something that puts your money to work instead of putting it to sleep. And ask yourself honestly, how many of your financial decisions in the last 6 months were made by your own strategy versus someone else's expectations? The answer to that question will tell you everything about where you are financially and exactly what needs to change. The difference that lasts. Here is what I want you to remember long after this video ends. The top 1% do not have a secret. They do not have access to opportunities you cannot find. They do not have connections you could never build. They have a system, a simple, consistent, boring system that they apply every single month without exception, regardless of how much or how little money arrives. 3 accounts, assets before expenses, decisions based on strategy, not pressure. That is it. Dangote applied this system with $3,000 in 1981. He applies the same system. Today, with 20 billion, the scale changed. The system never did. You do not need 20 billion to start. You need the system. Start this week. If this video changed how you see your money, subscribe. Because next week we go deeper into the one investment principle. Dangote says every African should understand before they put a single dollar anywhere. See you there?